My mother looked me in the eye across the kitchen table and said, "We used your emergency fund to cover your brother's mortgage. You're resourceful. You'll figure it out." She said it the way you'd say you borrowed someone's umbrella. My father was standing by the counter pouring coffee. He didn't turn around. My brother Camden was sitting right there, staring at his phone. I couldn't speak. My mouth opened and nothing came out. $31,000. Gone. 7 years of working doubles at the hospital, skipping vacations, eating rice and frozen vegetables 3 nights a week. Gone to cover my brother's third late mortgage payment in 8 months. And my mother called me resourceful like it was a compliment. But before I tell you how this ended, before I tell you what my aunt did at that dinner table, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment. Where are you watching from? I am 32 years old. My name is June. And I figured out early that in my family, being capable was the same as being invisible. I was the oldest. That meant I was the responsible one by default, before I had any say in it. My brother Camden was 4 years younger, and he had been the center of everything since the day he was born. Not because he was cruel about it. Camden was just easy to love in that loud, obvious way. He was funny, he was charming, he lit up rooms, and our parents were moths. I was the lamp no one noticed until something flickered. When I was 9, I wanted to take violin lessons. My music teacher at school had heard me humming along perfectly to a piece she played, and she pulled me aside after class and told my mother she thought I had real musical instinct. My mother smiled and said she would look into it. 3 weeks later, Camden said he wanted to try baseball. By that weekend, he had a glove, cleats, and a private pitching coach. I never mentioned violin again. It's not that my parents were monsters. That would have been simpler. Monsters you can name and run from. My parents were something more ordinary and harder to explain. They had a favorite, and they didn't even know it. Or maybe they knew and told themselves it didn't matter because I always seemed fine. I did always seem fine. That was the problem. I learned young that making noise got me nothing. Camden would complain and something would happen. I would complain and my mother would look at me with this vaguely puzzled expression, like she'd forgotten for a second that I also lived in the house. So I stopped complaining. I cleaned up after dinner without being asked. I learned to do my own laundry at 11. I babysat Camden on weekends so my parents could go out. I did it all quietly, and they said things like, "June is so mature," and "June never gives us any trouble." And I understood that those were not compliments so much as permission slips to keep ignoring me. When I was 16, Camden broke his arm during baseball, and my parents basically moved into the hospital for 3 days. I made my own dinners, got myself to school, wrote a paper on the Civil War, and got an A. When they came home, no one asked how I'd managed. I got into a good nursing program at a state university. It was a full scholarship, need-based. My parents made enough money that I barely qualified, but I did qualify, and I was proud of that. I worked 20 hours a week at a diner near campus on top of my coursework. I graduated with no debt and a job offer at a regional hospital. Camden, meanwhile, drifted. He took a few community college classes, dropped them, started a landscaping business, let it collapse, then got a construction job through a friend of my father's. He made decent money when he worked, but Camden spent the way he breathed, automatically, without thinking. He bought a truck he couldn't afford. He rented an apartment in a neighborhood that was too expensive for his income. And about 3 years ago, he bought a house. My parents co-signed the mortgage. I found out at Christmas dinner the year he bought it. My mother mentioned it casually, the way you'd mention someone got a haircut. "Oh, and we co-signed Camden's mortgage. Wasn't that exciting?" I smiled. I said congratulations. Inside, something cold shifted in my chest. That house was always going to be a problem. I knew it the way you know a storm is coming by how the air smells. Camden had never finished anything. He had never built anything that lasted. But the house was shiny and my parents were proud and nobody wanted to talk about the math. I kept working. I picked up extra shifts at the hospital. Night shifts, holiday shifts, the ones nobody else wanted. The pay differential was good and the quiet of the hospital at 3 m.m. suited me. I opened a high-yield savings account and set up an automatic transfer every payday. I called it my emergency fund, though in my mind it was really my freedom fund, the down payment on a condo of my own, on a life that was finally completely mine. $31,000. It took me 7 years. The Tuesday I found out it was gone, I was sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee going cold beside me. I'd had a brutal overnight shift and I should have been sleeping. But something made me open my banking app, just to look at the number. I did that sometimes when I was tired and needed to remember why I was so tired. The account showed a balance of $83. I stared at the screen for a long time. My brain kept offering explanations. Wrong account. Glitch. I hadn't slept. I was seeing things. I refreshed the page. $83. I clicked into the transaction history. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. There were transfers. 18 months of transfers. Small ones at first, 500 here, 800 there, the kind of amount you might not notice if you weren't looking. Then bigger ones. A transfer of $4,000 on a date I recognized, the date Camden's mortgage was 3 months behind. A transfer of $6,500. Another of $4,000 2 months later. The account was linked to a joint savings my father had helped me set up when I first started working. I'd kept it there because he'd set it up through his bank, and the interest rate was good and I trusted him. He had transfer privileges. He had been using them. I sat at that table for a long time. I didn't call anyone. I didn't cry. I just sat there in my scrubs from the night shift while the coffee went completely cold and the sun came up outside my window, and I thought about all the shifts. The Christmases I worked so a colleague with young kids could stay home. The night my close friend had a birthday party I missed because I'd picked up a shift. The vacation I never took. The coat I wore for 4 years because mine was still functional enough. I thought about Camden's house. I drove to my parents' house on Saturday. I'd spent the week documenting everything, screenshots, transaction history printed and organized by date, a running total in my own handwriting at the top of the page. $31,420. My father was in the garage when I pulled up. He saw my car and waved. Normal. Casual. He had no idea I knew, or if he did, he decided not to act like it. That somehow made it worse. My mother was in the kitchen when I walked in. She was making her Saturday soup, the chicken one she'd made every week my whole childhood. The smell of it hit me, and for a second I almost lost my nerve. Camden wasn't there. That was fine. This wasn't about Camden. "You're just in time for lunch," my mother said. "Sit down, I'll make you a bowl." "I need to talk to you both," I said. "Can you get Dad?" She heard something in my voice. She set down the ladle and called for my father. He came in from the garage, wiping his hands on a rag. He looked at me. Something shifted in his eyes. Just for a moment, a flicker of something that wasn't surprise. He knew. "My savings account," I said. I put the folder on the kitchen table. "I need you to explain the transaction history." My mother looked at my father. My father looked at the folder. He didn't touch it. "We needed to help Camden," he said. "Just like that. No wind-up, no apology, no hesitation." "That was my money," I said. "You've always been fine, June," my mother said. Her voice was gentle, like she was explaining something to a child. "You know how to manage. Camden was going to lose the house. We couldn't let that happen." "You couldn't let that happen," I repeated. "We'll pay it back," my father said, "once Camden gets back on his feet." "He's been getting back on his feet for 8 years. "Don't be cruel," my mother said. Cruel. I'd worked a night shift on New Year's Eve 3 years running. I had skipped my own birthday dinner because I picked up a shift to cover a sick colleague. I had eaten lunch at my desk every day for a year to put an extra 100 a month into that account. And I was the one being cruel. "You transferred my money without asking me," I said. My father's jaw tightened. "I had access to that account. I set it up. That doesn't make it yours." "June." My mother's voice went flat. "We are your parents. We did everything for you. We gave you a roof over your head, food, clothes. We are a family. Families help each other. Did Camden help me? I asked. When did Camden help anyone but himself? Camden has struggles you don't understand. I understand them perfectly, I said. I've been watching them my whole life. We stared at each other across the kitchen. I want the money returned, I said. My father laughed. Not a cruel laugh, a disbelieving one. We don't have $30,000 sitting in an account, June. Then figure it out, I said. I picked up the folder. I'm leaving now. You have a week to come up with the plan. If you walk out that door acting like this, don't expect us to support you, my father said. I looked at him. I thought about the violin. I thought about the New Year's Eve shifts. I thought about the balance on my phone screen, $83. You never have, I said. I drove straight to my Aunt Patrice's house. Patrice is my father's oldest sister. She is 61 years old, retired, and she spent 30 years as a forensic accountant for a firm that specialized in fraud cases. She is the person my father calls when he needs financial advice, and the person my mother has never quite trusted because Patrice doesn't flatter anyone and she doesn't pretend. When I knocked on her door, she took one look at me and stepped aside. Come in, she said. You look like you haven't slept. I worked a night shift, I said, and I found out my parents emptied my savings account. She went very still. Sit down, she said. I sat at her kitchen table, clean, spare, a single orchid on the windowsill, and I put the folder in front of her. She read through it without saying a word. I watched her face. She had one of those faces that gives almost nothing away, but I saw the exact moment she understood the scale of it. A small tightening around her eyes. She turned to the last page. 31,420, she said. Yes. She closed the folder and set both hands flat on top of it. Tell me everything, from the beginning. I told her. I told her about the joint account, about my father having transfer access, about the conversation in the kitchen that morning. I told her about Camden's mortgage. I told her about the way my mother said I was resourceful like it was a compliment. Aunt Patrice was quiet for a long moment. You know what this is? Legally, she said. It wasn't a question. I think so, I said. Unauthorized transfer of funds. At minimum, she said. Depending on how the account agreement was worded, it may cross into civil fraud territory. The transfer privileges your father had were custodial in nature, intended for emergency management of the account, not discretionary withdrawals to third parties. I don't want to sue my family, I said. I just want my money back. I know, she said, and we're going to get it back. But I want you to understand what leverage you have so you can use it clearly. She stood up and poured us both coffee. She moved around her kitchen calmly, like this was a Tuesday morning meeting and not my life falling apart on her table. Your brother is going to lose that house eventually, she said, setting down the mugs. The money they gave him bought time, not a solution. But that's not your problem to fix. She sat back down. Your problem is recovering what belongs to you. Dad said they don't have 30,000 in liquid assets. I know what they have, she said. She looked at me steadily. Your father has a retirement account he's been building for 25 years. Your mother has a whole life insurance policy she's been funding since before you were born. They have equity in the house. They have resources, June. They just don't want to use those resources for you. That landed somewhere hollow in my chest. I want to do this without police, I said, if I can. Then we do it with paperwork, she said, and with a very clear understanding of what the alternative is. She tapped the folder. This documentation is clean. You printed the transaction history directly from the bank portal, yes? Dates, amounts, account numbers visible? Yes. Good. Here's what we're going to do. She pulled out a legal pad and a pen and she started writing. She was going to invite my parents to dinner. She did this twice a year anyway, a family dinner at her house, nothing unusual. She would tell them there was something she needed to discuss about the family finances, which was true, and that everyone should come, which would include Camden. She was going to present the documentation. She was going to give my parents a signed repayment agreement to consider, a structured plan, 18 months, monthly transfers directly to a new account in my name only, with a legally notarized acknowledgement of the debt. And if they refused, she was going to explain quietly and in detail what a civil complaint filed with the state banking authority would look like. What discovery would mean for their financial records. What a forensic accountant could find in those records given enough time. They'll say you're bluffing, I said. I never bluff, she said, and your father knows that. She looked at me over the rim of her coffee mug. You have been carrying this family for years without credit, she said. They have mistaken your steadiness for unlimited patience. We are going to correct that misunderstanding. I slept in her guest room that night. It was small and tidy, and the sheets smelled like lavender. I lay there staring at the ceiling for a long time, not from dread, but from something unfamiliar. Something that felt almost like the moment before a storm breaks, when the pressure finally releases. The dinner was the following Saturday. I wore grey slacks and a white blouse. I looked neat and professional and like someone who was not frightened, because I wasn't. I had Aunt Patrice beside me and 31,420 reasons to sit straight in my chair. My parents arrived first. My father was wearing his going-out blazer. My mother had brought a bottle of wine. They came in smiling, kissing Patrice on the cheek, acting like this was any other dinner. Camden came in behind them. He looked tired. He'd put on some weight. He hugged Patrice, then saw me, and his smile went uncertain. "Hey," he said. "Hey," I said. We sat down. The table was set, but Patrice had not cooked. There was water and a plate of crackers and a folder at the head of the table where she sat. My parents exchanged a glance at the empty place settings. "Where's the food?" Camden asked. "There isn't any tonight," Patrice said. "We're here to talk about something important." She nodded to me. I opened the folder. "I'm going to read through these," I said. My voice didn't shake, and I'd like everyone to follow along. I read the first transfer, the date, the amount, the destination. My father went very still. My mother looked at the tablecloth. I read the second, the third. I read all 18 months of them. When I finished, the room was quiet. "Those were emergency transfers," my father said. "Camden was going to lose." "The house?" I said. "Yes, I know." I looked at Camden. "Your mortgage payments. Your arrears. Bought with money I worked night shifts to save. Money I never agreed to give anyone." Camden opened his mouth, closed it. He looked at my father. "Dad, you said you had savings set aside. You said it was fine." "It was handled," my father said. "It was handled with my money," I said. Camden put his hands on the table. He looked genuinely ill. "June, I didn't know." "I know you didn't," I said. "I meant it." Aunt Patrice set the second document on the table. "This is a repayment agreement," she said. Her voice was the same tone she'd use reading a spreadsheet. Clear, unhurried, factual. It acknowledges a debt of $31,420 owed by Robert and Sheila to June. Repayment over 24 months, $1,600 per month, transferred directly to an account in June's name alone. She paused. "I drafted it myself." "Patrice," my mother said, her voice going soft. "This is family. You don't need to make this so formal. We said we would pay her back." "When?" Aunt Patrice said. Silence. "When Camden gets back on his feet," Patrice continued. "He's been off his feet for quite some time. I'd like something more specific." "We can't commit to $1,600 a month," my father said. His voice had gone tight. "We have our own expenses. The house, retirement contributions." "Your retirement account has $214,000 in it," Aunt Patrice said. Everyone looked at her. "I've been your accountant for 15 years, Robert," she said quietly. "I know what you have." My father's face went red. You have the means to repay this debt, she said. The question is whether you're choosing to. This is extortion, my mother said. Her voice cracked. You're using the family against us. I'm asking you to repay money that was taken without consent, Patrice said. That's not extortion. The word you're looking for is accountability. She slid the pen across the table. My parents didn't sign immediately. My father argued for 20 minutes. He said the transfers were a misunderstanding. He said the account agreement gave him discretion. He said I had always been fine and he hadn't thought I'd miss it. He said a lot of things that were small and mean in the way that only people who know they've lost can be. At some point, Camden said, Dad, sign it. My father looked at him. Sign it, Camden said again. He wasn't looking at my father when he said it. He was looking at me. I'll pay my share back too. Whatever they took for my mortgage, I'll pay it back directly to June. I don't care how long it takes. Something moved through the room. My mother signed first in the end. Small, tight signature like she was angry at the paper. My father signed second, pressing so hard the pen nearly tore through. Aunt Patrice collected the papers. She checked both signatures. She nodded. One more thing, she said. She folded her hands on the table. I've been meaning to update my estate planning, she said. I've decided to make those changes official this week. June will be the primary beneficiary of my estate. She looked at my parents with an expression that contained no anger at all, just a very clear, very settled truth. I'd like you both to understand why. My mother started to speak. Because she earned it, Aunt Patrice said. Not because she asked for anything. Because she didn't. My parents left without saying goodbye to me. I heard my mother crying in the driveway, the sound of it drifting in through the window before the car doors closed. Camden lingered. He stood in the doorway of the dining room with his hands in his pockets, looking at the floor. He was quiet for long enough that I thought he might just leave. I'm sorry, he said finally. I know that doesn't fix anything. No, I said, but it matters. He nodded. He reached into his back pocket and put an envelope on the table. It's $300, he said. I know it's nothing, but I want to start somewhere. I picked up the envelope. I thought about all the years I'd watched my parents pour everything into him, and I thought about the fact that none of that had actually been good for him. They'd built him a pedestal and called it love, and he'd had to stand on it alone, getting smaller and more brittle every year, until one day the house started to go and the whole thing cracked. Thank you, I said. He left. Aunt Patrice poured us each a small glass of wine, and we sat together in her quiet dining room and didn't say much. We didn't need to. The first payment came on the 1st of the following month. $1,500. They negotiated me down by $100, and I had let them have it because I didn't need to fight over $100 a month. I needed it to be over. I opened a new account the day after the dinner. My name only, strong password, no shared access, no joint signers. I put Camden's $300 in first. It felt right. 6 months later, I had enough for a down payment. I bought a one-bedroom condo on the 3rd floor of a building with a security door and a balcony that faced east. I painted the living room a soft sage green on a Saturday morning, alone, with music playing and coffee on the counter, and I didn't finish it all in one day, and that was fine. It was mine. I could finish it whenever I wanted. My parents still called occasionally. My mother would leave voicemails that started with, I just want to check in, and ended with something sideways about how hard everything had been for them. I listened to them once each and deleted them. I wasn't punishing her. I just didn't have room anymore for things that cost me energy and gave me nothing back. Camden texted more than I expected. He'd gotten a different job, something in project management, he said, more stable. He was looking at a smaller apartment, closer to work, something he could actually afford alone. He sent me $200 one month and $150 the next, and a note that said simply, making progress. I believed him. I had dinner with Aunt Patrice every Sunday. She taught me about index funds and estate planning and how to read a balance sheet. She told me stories about cases she'd worked, Names changed, details blurred, and sometimes they were funny and sometimes they were grim, and she told them all with the same level voice. I started to understand where I got my steadiness from. It wasn't from my parents, it was from her. I had just never been close enough to see it. I stood on my balcony one morning in early spring, coffee in hand, watching the sun come up over the city. It was a Tuesday. I had a day shift starting at noon. The air was cold and clean, and the light was doing something beautiful to the buildings across the way, turning everything gold for about 10 minutes before it went ordinary again. I thought about that girl who worked the New Year's Eve shift alone for the third year in a row and told herself it was just practical, it was just the differential pay, it was fine. I felt something for her that wasn't quite sadness. It was more like respect. She had kept going when keeping going was all she had. She got here. I went inside. I refilled my coffee. I sat down at my desk and opened my banking app. Balance $54,218. Safe. Private. Mine. I closed the app and got ready for my shift. I was okay. I was more than okay. For the first time in my life, I wasn't surviving in spite of my family. I was thriving because I had finally stopped waiting for them to notice me and started noticing myself. That was enough. That was everything. I used to think the hardest part was the money. $31,000 is not an abstract number. It is 3 years of night shifts. It is New Year's Eve alone in a hospital corridor. It is the coat I wore until the lining gave out because I could put another $40 into savings instead. When I saw that balance, $83, I felt something leave my body. Not just the money, something older than that. But sitting on my aunt's balcony a year later, watching the city go quiet in the early evening, I understood something I couldn't have seen from inside it. What happened to me was not random. It was the result of a very specific set of choices, theirs and mine, accumulating quietly over decades until the weight of them finally broke the surface. My parents made a choice over and over to see my steadiness as a resource rather than a person. Every time I didn't complain, they took it as permission. Every time I managed, they felt less obligated to protect me. There is a logic to that kind of neglect. Not a good logic, but a logic. And it only works as long as the person on the receiving end stays silent. The moment I stopped being silent, the whole arrangement collapsed. Not because I was cruel, because I finally told the truth about what it had cost me. That is the thing about integrity. Not the word on a motivational poster, but the actual daily practice of it. It is not dramatic. It is mostly just not lying to yourself about what you're worth. I had spent years letting my family's version of me, capable, quiet, fine, become my own version. Aunt Patrice helped me see that capable and disposable are not the same thing. She said it plainly, like an equation: you have value. They exploited it. We are correcting the math. Her clarity was the most loving thing anyone had done for me in years. And Camden. I did not expect Camden. I expected the brother who had coasted his whole life on borrowed resources to shrug and look away. Instead, he put $300 on a table and said he wanted to start somewhere. That matters. Not because $300 is significant against 31,000, but because it was the first time in his life he chose accountability over comfort. Watching him choose that was like watching someone learn to stand up straight. Slow, a little uncertain, but real. What I know now is that resilience is not about being unbreakable. I was not unbreakable. I sat at my kitchen table at 6 in the morning in my scrubs and stared at $83 and felt every one of those 7 years at once. Resilience is what comes after that moment. It is picking up the phone and driving to someone you trust. It is printing the documents and walking into the room. It is not waiting for someone to notice you've been wronged. It is naming it yourself clearly without apology. The condo is mine. The account is mine. Sunday dinners with my aunt are mine. I built this the same way I built everything, steadily without applause, one shift at a time. The difference is that now I know it was worth building.